And on the fifth day, he looked at the next template that he created, the atmosphere, the firmament that he called heaven. And then that which was below. And can you imagine what he did? In his mind, all these wonderful birds that he created, every single one of them had a secret that defied any evolutionary theory that is in the world today. And in a moment, he speaks and quarks start to spin around electrons, and electrons started to spin around neutrons and protons and form an atom, and atoms started to spin around and form molecules, and molecules started to work its way together, and all of a sudden it started to form DNA. And within that DNA, God would speak instructions into the DNA that would form this one creature. And as he spoke that into the DNA would come together, forming the nucleus of a cell. And from the nucleus of the cell, ribosomes, nucleic acid, all this was starting to form within that cell. And the cell would then come together with other cells that God has spoken and commanded to make tissue. Tissue would come together and make organs. Organs would form itself in a system to form a bird. And a life would begin. And out of the air, you found a cardinal or a bald eagle. And birds were popping out from all over the place. Can you imagine the joy that our Creator had in creating that kind of life? Not only did he create the birds, he created the very molecules that the birds were made of. He didn't stop there. He looked in the ocean and it was calm. And he didn't see anything there. And he started to speak varieties of fish, hundreds and thousands of them. Molecules started to come together in tissue, and soon you started to see the oceans forming in fish from the very smallest ones. And then he decided, let me try a blue whale. It took him maybe all of a tenth of a second. That's a powerful God. And the evening and the morning was the fifth day. And then God looked at the land and the vegetation that was there, and he decided it was time to go ahead and create animals and creatures to roam the earth and to roam all over the land. And he started to speak the words, and if you could just see it, as the molecules started to form from the atoms and the tissue and the DNA and can you imagine what it was like to watch that elephant all of a sudden forming, and then within a moment, life came into that elephant, and it came alive, and it started to look around for the first time, already pre-programmed. And he created all the creatures that was there. And then God decided to do one thing that was different than all the rest. He said, let us make man in our image. But instead of doing it like he did before, where he spoke and he created and things started to come together, man was going to be different. Man was going to be one of his greatest creation. And God got down into the dirt. And the Bible says he got down and he started to form man out of the dust of the earth. Out of the dirt, he formed him and created him. It wasn't like speaking. God got intimate with man before man even had life in him. He formed his face and the cheeks and his chin and the arms and his legs. And after he was done and man was fully formed, man didn't have life in him yet. And the same God that breathed the stars into the heaven breathed life into a man. And that which was inorganic became organic. That which was dust and dirt became flesh and blood. And man became a living soul. And he brought man up. And if you look at how man was created, he created man with every single ability to communicate. He gave him eyes to be able to see. He gave him ears to be able to hear. He gave him voice. He was able to touch and feel pressure and temperature, that which was soft and that which was rough. He gave him every single avenue to receive information for one purpose. It was communication. And the main purpose of communication was so that man could communicate with his whole being with God himself. That every aspect of who he was would be able to enjoy God's relationship. He then looked at man and started giving man an assignment to name all the animals. You see, he wanted man to work with him, that he and man would become one, that they would be together forever. But he realized it's not good for man to be alone. And so he takes this man named Adam and he places him to sleep, and he takes from within him, his side, a rib. And he forms a woman. And he brings her to him, and you could just see him. He takes one look at her and says, "Whoa, man." And that's what she became. And together they were told to be able to tend the garden. You see, he looked at the greatest gift. He looked at man, and he looked at this woman. And together, they were special. They were very special. And darkness knew it. And Satan knew how special they were to him. And in his anger and his resentment, before time was there, he decided to go ahead and get back at God. To take that which is so precious to him and darken it. To make it ugly. From an apple, from a fruit, from something that was supposed to be the knowledge of good and evil that man was never to have knowledge of. Because God said that it was only that which was good he would take. And I believe that it was probably on a Sabbath day that this happened. Here's the reason why. You see, the last thing that he did after the sixth day is he created one more day. He created the day, and then he filled it. Do you know what he filled it with? Himself. That's why he would say that he is Lord of the Sabbath. That it was a day of rest. It was a day for us to come together and worship him and spend time with him. After partaking of the forbidden fruit, the Bible says that God came walking in the garden. And he called out to man because man didn't come up to him, but instead man was hiding. Oftentimes you would see that if man is in touch with sin, we tend to hide from God. The God that created us with every avenue to communicate with him, we hide from. The God that is familiar with not only every cell in our body, but he's familiar with the script in the cell that developed who you are. Even more so, every atom, every electron, and every little quirk that goes around an electron. The very smallest particle in your body, he knows. Adam hid himself. And in doing so, showed his blame for him. He showed his guilt. The Bible says that God pronounced a curse. As a matter of fact, if you read it, it's found in Genesis chapter 3. It was a passing down of authority from Adam to Eve, and finally Eve, in the short time that she had the power and authority, gave it to a serpent. And God then cursed the serpent because of what he had done. You are to be cursed more than any cattle and more than any beast of the field, and on your belly you shall go, and you shall eat dust all the days of your life. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. And here's the first prophecy that was ever written. And he shall bruise your head, but you shall bruise his heels. I want to talk about the seed. Because if you follow the seed, it goes through time. There's a line that it goes through. You follow it through the generations of Adam all the way to Noah. And when you study the names, you could see that even within the names, it prescribes that of the prophecy, that there's one coming. It went from Noah all the way through to Abraham, almost like it was being passed on, one to another, this one seed. See, Satan hated that seed because it knew that one day the prophecy may come true, that this seed would crush his head.